The bullet that grazed Owen Irving's shoulder in the summer of 1878 taught him that loyalty in the Arizona Territory was as rare as water in August, and just about as likely to vanish when you needed it most. He pressed his bandana against the wound as he rode hard toward Monticello, the small settlement nestled in the San Juan County corner of Utah Territory, where red rock formations jutted from the earth like broken promises. His former partner had left him for dead after they had discovered a cache of stolen gold, taking both the treasure and Owen's trust with him. The betrayal stung worse than the bullet, settling deep in his chest where hope used to live. At 26 years old, Owen had already learned that people would sell you out for a handful of coins and never look back. The sun beat down mercilessly as Monticello came into view, a collection of wooden buildings that seemed to crouch against the harsh landscape. Owen's horse, a faithful mare named Copper, picked her way down the rocky trail with careful steps. He had raised her from a foal, and she represented one of the few constants in his life. Animals, he had learned, possessed a loyalty that humans could only pretend to understand. The town doctor had his practice above the general store, and Owen dismounted with a grimace, tying Copper to the hitching post. Blood had soaked through his shirt, drawing stares from the few people on the dusty street. He climbed the exterior stairs slowly, each step sending fresh waves of pain through his shoulder. The door stood ajar, and he pushed it open to find a woman bent over a medical text, her dark hair pinned back in a practical bun. She looked up at the sound of his entrance, and Owen found himself staring into eyes the color of desert sage, green with flecks of gray that seemed to shift in the light filtering through the window. "You are bleeding," she said, rising from her chair with fluid efficiency. Her voice carried a slight accent that Owen could not quite place, something European mixed with years of American living. "Notice that," Owen managed, his vision swimming slightly. The ride had taken more out of him than he had realized. "Sit down before you fall down," she commanded, gesturing to the examination table. "I am Lucia Novak. The doctor is my father, but he is away delivering a baby at the Morrison Ranch. I assist him, and I can treat your wound." Owen lowered himself onto the table, studying her as she gathered supplies. She appeared to be in her early 20s, moving with the confidence of someone who knew her capabilities. Her dress was simple and practical, covered by a clean apron that spoke of professional pride. "This will hurt," Lucia said, approaching with a bottle of whiskey and clean cloth. "The bullet, did it go through?" "Grazed me," Owen replied. "Just need it cleaned and wrapped," she nodded, her fingers gentle but efficient as she helped him remove his shirt. The wound was ugly, a furrow carved along the outer edge of his shoulder, but she had seen worse. Owen could tell by the way she did not flinch or hesitate. "Who shot you?" she asked as she began cleaning the wound. The whiskey burned like hellfire, but Owen clenched his jaw and remained still. "Someone I trusted," he said after a moment. "Won't make that mistake again." Lucia's hands paused briefly before continuing their work. "Trust is not a mistake. Choosing the wrong person to trust, that is the mistake." "Sounds like philosophy," Owen said, watching her face as she concentrated on threading a needle. "You a doctor or a preacher?" "Neither," she replied, leaning close to stitch the deepest part of the wound. "I am simply someone who has learned that abandoning all trust because of one betrayal is like burning down your house because you found a spider." Despite the pain, Owen felt a smile tug at his lips. "That is an interesting way of looking at it." "My father is Czech, my mother was from Boston," Lucia explained as she worked. "They met when he came to America to practice medicine. She taught me to read, he taught me to heal. Both taught me that people are complex, capable of both great loyalty and terrible betrayal. Your mother passed." Owen asked, noting her use of past tense. 3 years ago, Lucia said softly. Pneumonia. Even all of our medical knowledge could not save her. My father still blames himself, though there was nothing more he could have done. Owen watched her finish the stitching with practiced skill, her fingers steady despite the personal pain his question had stirred. There was something remarkable about her composure, a strength that did not require bluster or bravado. "You are good at this," he said as she began wrapping his shoulder with clean bandages. "I have been helping my father since I was 14, Lucia replied. 8 years of practice makes most things routine. She secured the bandage and stepped back to examine her work. Keep it clean and dry. Come back in 3 days so I can check for infection. No heavy lifting, no riding hard, no getting shot at again." "That last one might be tricky," Owen said, carefully putting his ruined shirt back on. "How much do I owe you?" $2, Lucia said, returning her supplies to their proper places. "And the promise that you will actually rest. I do not like wasting my good stitching on stubborn cowboys who immediately undo my work." Owen counted out the coins and placed them on the table beside her medical text. "You have my word." "The word of a man who just told me he no longer trusts anyone," Lucia pointed out, but there was a hint of warmth in her voice. "I will try not to be too skeptical." As Owen walked carefully down the stairs, he found himself thinking about her words. He had come to Monticello planning to rest for a few days before moving on, chasing whatever opportunities presented themselves across the territories. The town held nothing for him beyond a place to heal and resupply. Yet something about Lucia Novak's steady gaze and sharp mind lingered in his thoughts as he led Copper toward the livery stable. The stable owner, an older man named George, took Copper with gentle hands and promised her good care. Owen paid for a week, then made his way to the boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She took one look at his bandaged shoulder and pale face and clucked her tongue. "You look half dead," she declared. "I will bring you soup and bread. You will eat it, then you will sleep." Owen lacked the energy to argue. His room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a washstand. He managed to remove his boots before collapsing onto the mattress, where he fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When he woke, the light had changed to late afternoon gold. A tray sat on the small table by the door, bearing a bowl of soup that had gone cold and thick slices of bread. Owen ate mechanically, his body demanding fuel. The wound throbbed with each movement, reminding him of his stupidity in trusting Jack Morrow. They had ridden together for 2 years, partnering on various jobs that skirted the edges of legality without crossing too far into outlaw territory. Escort work, cattle drives, bounty hunting on occasion. Jack had watched Owen's back through scrapes with rustlers, and a tense confrontation with Navajo warriors who thought they were claim jumpers. Owen had returned the favor, pulling Jack from a flash flood and lending him money when his gambling debts grew too heavy. Then they had found the gold, cached in a cave by outlaws who were now either dead or in prison. It had seemed like fortune finally smiling on them, a reward for their hard years of dusty work. They had made camp to decide how to proceed, and Owen had fallen asleep thinking about buying a small ranch, maybe settling down. He had woken to the sound of Copper's nervous whinnying and Jack's silhouette against the dying fire, the bag of gold in his hands and a pistol pointed at Owen's chest. The shot had come as Owen rolled instinctively, the bullet meant for his heart catching his shoulder instead. Jack had fled with the gold while Owen lay bleeding, and Copper had stayed close, allowing him to pull himself into the saddle and ride for help. The betrayal replayed itself in Owen's mind as he finished the bread, each detail sharp and painful. He had trusted Jack completely, and that trust had nearly killed him. Over the next 3 days, Owen followed Lucia's instructions with reluctant obedience. He rested, he kept the wound clean, and he took short walks around Monticello to keep his muscles from stiffening. The town revealed itself slowly, a community of perhaps 200 people trying to carve civilization from unforgiving land. The farmers struggled with irrigation, the merchants struggled with supply lines, and everyone struggled with the knowledge that they lived far from anything resembling law or order. On the evening of the third day, Owen returned to the doctor's office. This time he found both Lucia and her father present. Dr. Novak was a compact man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He examined Owen's shoulder with gentle thoroughness while Lucia stood by, ready to assist. "Your daughter does excellent work," Owen said as doctor. Novak probed the healing wound. "She is better than me in many ways," Dr. Novak replied with obvious pride. "But society prefers to be treated by an old man rather than a young woman, no matter her skill." "Society can be stupid," Owen said, and was rewarded by a quick smile from Lucia. "The healing is good," Dr. Novak declared. "No infection, stitches are holding well. You are fortunate." "I am starting to think I might be," Owen replied, his eyes meeting Lucia's briefly before she turned to clean the instruments. "Doctor." Novak noticed the exchange with the perception of a man who had spent decades reading people. "My daughter tells me you were shot by someone you trusted. I am sorry. Betrayal wounds deeper than bullets." "Both hurt plenty," Owen said, reaching for his shirt. "Will you stay in Monticello, doctor?" Novak asked. "Or are you passing through?" It was a question Owen had been asking himself for 3 days. The sensible choice was to move on, find work, keep moving as he always had. Monticello offered nothing special, just another small town in a territory full of them. Yet he found himself hesitating. "Haven't decided yet," he admitted. "Depends on whether there is work." "The Morrison Ranch needs men," Lucia said, still facing away as she organized the medical cabinet. "Good men who know horses and cattle." "The foreman was asking my father if he knew anyone reliable." "I know horses and cattle," Owen said. "Reliability might be harder to vouch for given recent events." Dr. Novak chuckled. "I will vouch for you. A man who follows medical instructions as well as you have shows a respect for expertise and an ability to think beyond his own stubbornness. That suggests reliability to me." And so Owen found himself riding out to the Morrison Ranch the next morning, his shoulder still tender but healing well. The ranch sprawled across a valley where a creek provided precious water, allowing grass to grow thick enough for cattle. James Morrison, a weathered man in his 50s, looked Owen over with the practiced eye of someone who had hired and fired dozens of cowboys. "Doc Novak says you are reliable," Morrison said. "Says you followed his daughter's instructions without complaint." "His daughter did good work," Owen replied. "Seemed foolish to waste it." Morrison nodded slowly. "Can you work with that shoulder?" "Light work for another week, then anything you need," Owen said honestly. "I know horses, cattle, and ranch work. I can read, write, and cipher if you need record keeping. I do not gamble much, I do not drink to excess, and I show up when I say I will." "What brought you to Monticello?" Morrison asked. Owen met his gaze directly. "I was betrayed by my partner. He shot me and took money that should have been split between us. I came here to heal and decided I might stay." The honesty seemed to satisfy Morrison more than any practiced speech would have. "I pay $30 a month plus room and board. The work is hard but fair. I do not tolerate stealing, fighting, or mistreating the animals. You start tomorrow, light duties until that shoulder is right." Owen extended his hand and Morrison shook it firmly. The deal was sealed, simple and direct as most things were in the territories. The ranch bunkhouse was more comfortable than many Owen had stayed in, with actual beds instead of bedrolls and a stove that kept the chill off during cold nights. He met the other hands, a mixture of young men seeking adventure and older cowboys who had found their place and settled into it. They accepted him easily enough, interested more in whether he could do his job than in his past. The work started gently, mending fences and organizing the tack room while his shoulder finished healing. Owen appreciated Morrison's respect for the injury, knowing many ranchers would have pushed him to full duties immediately. He spent his mornings working and his afternoons exercising copper, rebuilding his strength gradually. On Sunday, the ranch gave the men the day off, and most rode into Monticello for drinking and cards. Owen went too, but he found himself walking toward the church where services were just letting out. He spotted Lucia beside her father, wearing a simple dress of blue calico that matched her eyes in the bright sunlight. "You are still alive," she said when she noticed him, "and walking upright." "I am impressed. Your stitching held," Owen replied. "Figured you might like to know." "I always like to know my patients are healing well," Lucia said. Dr. Novak had been pulled into conversation with another parishioner, leaving them standing alone in the churchyard. "Would you like to take a walk?" Owen asked, surprising himself with the question. "Unless you have other plans." Lucia tilted her head, considering him with those steady eyes. "I have no other plans. A walk would be pleasant." They strolled down Monticello's main street, staying in the shade of the buildings where the temperature was slightly less brutal. For a while, neither spoke, comfortable in the silence. "Why did you become a doctor?" Owen finally asked. "I did not," Lucia corrected gently. "I am not a doctor. Women cannot attend medical school, at least not easily. I am my father's assistant, trained by him but without credentials." "Seems unfair," Owen said. "You clearly have the skill." "Many things are unfair," Lucia replied. "I choose to do what I can rather than waste energy mourning what I cannot change. I help people heal, even if society will not put the title of doctor before my name." "That is a practical way to look at it," Owen said. "Must take strength, though, to accept those limitations." "Less strength than you might think," Lucia said. "My mother taught me to find satisfaction in the work itself, not in what others call me. She was very wise." They had reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open scrubland. A few scraggly cottonwoods clustered near a dry wash, offering a spot of shade. Owen led the way to them, and they sat on a fallen log, looking out at the red rock formations in the distance. "You said you were betrayed," Lucia said after a moment. "Are you healing from that as well as from the bullet?" Owen picked up a small stone and turned it over in his fingers. "The bullet will heal clean. The rest I am not sure about." "Tell me what happened," Lucia said softly. "If you want to. Sometimes speaking a wound helps it heal." So Owen told her. He explained about Jack, about their partnership, about finding the gold. He described waking to the muzzle of a pistol and the searing pain of the bullet. He admitted his own foolishness in trusting so completely, in never seeing the signs that Jack might not be as loyal as he seemed. Lucia listened without interruption, her face showing sympathy but not pity. When he finished, she sat quietly for a moment before speaking. "My father had a partner once before I was born," she said. "Another doctor, a man he studied with and trusted completely. When my father came to America, this man promised to join him to help establish a practice together. My father waited 2 years, turning away other opportunities, staying in Boston because they had agreed to build something together there. The man never came. He took a position in Vienna instead, a prestigious hospital appointment that he never mentioned in his letters. My father only learned of it through another colleague." "What did your father do?" Owen asked. He was angry, then hurt, then eventually he let it go, Lucia said. He realized that holding onto that betrayal was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So he moved west, met my mother, built a new life. He says now that the betrayal was a gift because it brought him to the life he was meant to have. That is a generous way to see it, Owen said. It is a survival way to see it, Lucia countered. Bitterness would have destroyed him. He chose differently. Owen looked at her profile, the way the dappled sunlight played across her features. There was wisdom in her that seemed beyond her years, a groundedness that called to something deep in his chest. "You think I should forgive Jack?" he asked. "I think you should release him," Lucia said, turning to meet his eyes. "Forgiveness is for you, not for him. It is the decision to stop letting his actions control your life." They sat together until the sun's angle shifted and the shade began to disappear. When they walked back toward town, Owen felt something inside him ease, a tension he had not realized he was carrying. The summer months passed in a rhythm of work and occasional visits to town. Owen proved himself capable at the Morrison Ranch, earning the respect of the other hands and the trust of Morrison himself. His shoulder healed completely, leaving only a puckered scar that reminded him to be more careful where he placed his faith. He saw Lucia regularly, at first by accident and then increasingly by design. He would time his trips to town to coincide with her Sunday afternoon walks. They would stroll together, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about books she had read, medical cases that intrigued her, dreams of one day seeing San Francisco. He told her about the places he had been, the wild beauty of the territories, the satisfaction of working with horses. In September, the first hints of autumn began to touch the high desert. The cottonwoods turned gold and the air carried a crisp edge in the mornings. Morrison asked Owen if he planned to stay through winter, and Owen realized he did not want to be anywhere else. "The Morrison Ranch is offering steady work," he told Lucia one Sunday as they sat by the dry wash. "I am thinking of staying." "Because of the work?" Lucia asked, and there was something in her voice that made Owen's heart speed up. "Partly," he admitted. "Also because of the company." Lucia smiled, a real smile that transformed her serious face into something luminous. "I am glad. I have enjoyed having someone to talk to who sees things differently than most people here." "I have enjoyed it too," Owen said, "more than I expected to. You did not expect to enjoy yourself." Lucia teased. "I did not expect to feel like staying anywhere," Owen corrected. "I have been moving for so long it became the only thing I knew. Then I came here and something changed." "What changed?" Lucia asked softly. Owen reached for her hand, half expecting her to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers curled around his, warm and sure. "I started remembering what it felt like to trust someone," he said. "Started thinking that maybe loyalty wasn't as rare as I had convinced myself it was." Lucia squeezed his hand gently. "Loyalty is not rare. It is simply precious. Like water in the desert, it exists, but you must know where to look." They sat together as the sun tracked across the sky, hands linked, both aware that something fundamental had shifted between them. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened with the changing season. Owen began joining the Novaks for Sunday dinner after church, sitting at their table and listening to Dr. Novak's stories of medical school and his early years in America. The doctor clearly approved of Owen's attention to his daughter, treating him with warmth and humor. "You are good for her, doctor," Novak said one evening when Lucia had stepped outside to check on a patient who had arrived unexpectedly. "She has been lonely, I think, since her mother died. Too serious, too focused on work. You make her laugh." "She makes me think," Owen replied, "makes me want to be better than I have been." "That is what love does. Dr. Novak said with a knowing smile. It shows us who we could be, then gives us reason to become that person. The word love hung in the air between them, undeniable and true. Owen had been falling in love with Lucia Novak since the first day he met her, though he had been too guarded to admit it even to himself. But her steady presence, her sharp mind, her quiet strength had worn down his defenses as surely as water wore down stone. In October, Owen took his accumulated wages and rode to a trading post 3 days distant, where he purchased a ring. It was simple, a silver band with a small turquoise stone, but it was well made and beautiful in its simplicity. He carried it back to Monticello with a mixture of nervousness and certainty. On a Sunday afternoon when the cottonwoods glowed gold against the red rocks, Owen and Lucia took their customary walk. He led her to their spot by the dry wash, where they had shared so many conversations. "Lucia," he said, taking both her hands in his, "when I came to Monticello, I was convinced that loyalty was the rarest thing in the world. I believed people would always choose themselves over others, that trust was a fool's game. Then I met you, and everything I thought I knew turned out to be wrong." Lucia's eyes were bright, her hands trembling slightly in his. "You have shown me what real loyalty looks like," Owen continued. "Not blind faith, but conscious choice. Every day you choose to show up, to care, to see the best in people while still being clear-eyed about their faults. You have been loyal to your father, to your patients, to your own principles. And somewhere along the way, you became loyal to me too, even when I did not deserve it." "Owen," Lucia whispered, but he pressed on. "I love you," he said simply. "I love your strength and your wisdom and the way you see the world. I love how you make me want to be better, to be worthy of your loyalty. And I am asking if you will let me spend the rest of my life being loyal to you in return." He released one of her hands to pull the ring from his pocket, holding it up in the golden afternoon light. "Lucia Novak, will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Lucia's cheeks, but she was smiling. "Yes," she said, her voice strong despite the tears. "Yes, Owen Irving, I will marry you. I will marry you because you have shown me that trust, when given to the right person, is not weakness but wisdom. I will marry you because you make me laugh and think and hope. I will marry you because I love you too, more than I knew I could love anyone." Owen slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, holding her close while the cottonwoods rustled overhead. They stayed there until the shadows grew long, making plans and promises, imagining the future they would build together. They were married 6 weeks later in Monticello's small church, with half the town in attendance. Morrison gave Owen the day off and a generous bonus. Dr. Novak walked his daughter down the aisle with tears in his eyes but a steady step. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt, conducted by a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. Owen had never been more certain of anything in his life than when he spoke his vows. Looking into Lucia's eyes, he saw his future reflected back at him, and it was bright with possibility. They moved into a small house on the edge of town, close enough to Dr. Novak's office that Lucia could continue helping her father, but far enough to have privacy. Owen continued working at the Morrison Ranch, though he began looking for opportunities to buy his own land. Lucia helped her father during the day and in the evenings worked on turning their house into a home. Marriage suited them both. They discovered the rhythms of shared life, learning each other's habits and preferences. Owen learned that Lucia liked her morning coffee strong and her evening tea weak, that she read before bed every night, that she sang softly to herself when she thought no one was listening. Lucia learned that Owen woke before dawn, that he worried more than he showed, that he had a gift for gentling horses that bordered on magical. In January, when snow dusted the red rocks and the creek froze at its edges, Lucia came to Owen with news that made his heart soar. She was pregnant, due in late summer. They shared the news with Dr. Novak, who embraced them both and declared himself thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandfather. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, despite occasional nausea. Lucia continued working as long as she could, finally reluctantly agreeing to lighter duties when her belly grew too large to bend comfortably over patients. Owen found himself overcome with protective tenderness, watching his wife move through the world carrying their child. In August of 1879, on a night when thunder rumbled through the canyons but brought no rain, Lucia went into labor. Dr. Novak attended his daughter with steady hands while Owen paced the hallway, more frightened than he had ever been facing down bandits or wild horses. The hours stretched endlessly until finally, a baby's cry pierced the night. "You have a son," Dr. Novak said, emerging with the child wrapped in a blanket. "A healthy, strong son." Owen held his boy with shaking hands, looking down at the tiny face and feeling his heart expand impossibly larger. Lucia was exhausted but radiant when he entered the bedroom, reaching for their child. "Samuel," she said softly, touching the baby's soft hair. "We will call him Samuel, for my mother's father." "Samuel Irving," Owen agreed, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "He is perfect." The weeks after Samuel's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Owen learned to change diapers and warm bottles, to walk the floor at midnight when the baby fussed. Lucia navigated motherhood with the same practical competence she brought to everything, but Owen saw the wonder in her eyes when she nursed their son, the fierce protective love that mirrored his own feelings. Life settled into a new rhythm. Owen continued working at the Morrison Ranch, but began seriously planning to buy his own land. Morrison, impressed by Owen's dedication and skill, offered to sell him a parcel of ranch land at a fair price, paid over time. It was not a large piece, perhaps 200 acres, but it had water and good grass and the potential to support a modest cattle operation. Owen accepted, and suddenly he was a landowner, a rancher, a man with roots going down into the earth. He and Lucia talked long into the night about their plans. They would build a larger house, expand the herd gradually, maybe raise horses as well as cattle. Lucia wanted to establish a small clinic, a place where she could see patients more formally, with her father's supervision making it respectable. The years unfolded with both challenges and joys. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Owen proved to be a careful manager, never overextending, always planning for droughts and hard winters. Lucia's clinic became a fixture in Monticello, and though she could never call herself a doctor, everyone knew to come to her for medical care. Dr. Novak officially supervised, but increasingly it was Lucia who made the diagnoses and prescribed the treatments. In 1881, they had a second child, a daughter they named Margaret after Lucia's mother. Samuel was a gentle older brother, fascinated by the tiny baby. Owen found himself even more protective with a daughter, understanding viscerally every father's terror at raising a girl in such a wild world. The children grew surrounded by love and stability. Samuel inherited his mother's serious nature and his father's way with animals. Margaret was all fire and curiosity, asking endless questions and fearlessly exploring their land. Owen and Lucia raised them to be kind but strong, to value loyalty and honesty above all else. Dr. Novak remained active well into his 70s, though he increasingly left the medical practice to Lucia. He was a devoted grandfather, teaching the children to read and filling their heads with stories of the old country and his adventures in America. His presence was a gift they all treasured. One evening in the spring of 1885, when Samuel was 5 and Margaret was 3, Owen sat on the porch of their ranch house watching his family. Lucia was in the garden with Margaret, teaching her the names of plants. Samuel was in the corral with Dr. Novak, learning to brush down a patient horse. The sun was setting, painting the red rocks in shades of crimson and gold. Lucia looked up and caught Owen watching. She smiled and walked over, sitting beside him on the steps while Margaret continued examining a caterpillar with intense concentration. "What are you thinking?" Lucia asked, taking his hand. "I was thinking about the first time I saw you," Owen said. "I rode into town bleeding and bitter, convinced the whole world was rotted through. I was so sure that loyalty was impossible, that trusting anyone was foolish. And now," Lucia prompted, "now I look at you, at our children, at the life we have built, and I realize loyalty is not rare at all," Owen said. "It is everywhere, once you open your eyes to see it. It is in the way you show up every morning to help people heal. It is in our children's honest faces. It is in your father traveling across an ocean to build a better life. It is in Morrison giving me a chance when I was nobody. It is in Copper waiting patiently every day for me to come home." He turned to face her fully, raising their joined hands to kiss her knuckles. "Most of all, it is in you. In the way you chose to see past my damage and fear. In the way you choose me every single day, over and over. You made rare become real, Lucia. You showed me that loyalty is not about never being let down. It is about choosing to be trustworthy yourself, to show up and stay even when things are hard." Lucia's eyes were bright with tears. "You showed me the same thing. I was so focused on my work, on not disappointing my father or my mother's memory. I had forgotten there could be more. You taught me that opening your heart is not foolish, it is brave. That love is worth the risk of loss." They sat together as the last light faded from the sky, watching their children play. Dr. Novak came to sit with them, bouncing Margaret on his knee while Samuel leaned against Owen's side. "You have built something good here," Dr. Novak said, looking at the ranch spread before them. "Something that will last." And it did last. The ranch prospered through the hard years and the good ones. Owen and Lucia added to their herd carefully, bought more land when they could, and raised their children to understand the value of honest work and loyal hearts. In 1887, they had a third child, another son they named Thomas. He was a surprise, arriving 7 years after Margaret, but he completed their family in a way none of them had known they needed. Thomas had his father's dark hair and his mother's bright mind, and he grew up adored by his older siblings. Dr. Novak lived to see all 3 grandchildren healthy and thriving. He passed peacefully in his sleep in 1889, having spent his last evening playing chess with Samuel and reading to Margaret and Thomas. The entire town mourned him, understanding they had lost not just a doctor but a pillar of their small community. Lucia grieved deeply but not bitterly, sustained by Owen's steady love and the children who needed her. She took over the medical practice entirely, and after some initial resistance, the town accepted her fully in the role. Letters of recommendation from other doctors her father had known helped, as did her undeniable skill and years of experience. The years continued their march, bringing changes both welcome and challenging. Monticello grew slowly, gaining a proper telegraph office and eventually a rail connection to the wider world. The Utah Territory inched toward statehood, bringing more law and order but also more regulation. Owen adapted, learning the new ways while maintaining the values that had always guided him. Samuel grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He worked alongside Owen, learning every aspect of the operation. Margaret shocked everyone by announcing at 15 that she wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps, studying medicine from Lucia with fierce determination. Thomas, the youngest, seemed to have inherited the wanderlust Owen had left behind, talking endlessly about seeing other parts of the country. On a summer evening in 1895, Owen sat on the same porch where he had sat so many times before. 17 years had passed since that first conversation with Lucia. His hair showed more gray now, and his shoulder ached when rain was coming, but he was content in a way his younger self could never have imagined. Lucia came out to join him, moving with the grace that had never left her despite the years and the children. At 41, she was as beautiful to him as she had been at 23, perhaps more so, because now he knew every facet of her character, every strength and vulnerability. "Samuel is talking about proposing to the Fletcher girl," Lucia said, sitting beside him. "Did you know?" "I suspected," Owen said. "She is a good woman, hard-working, honest. They will be happy together." "Margaret has been reading every medical text she can get her hands on," Lucia continued. "She is asking about medical schools back east, places that might accept women." "What do you think?" Owen asked. "I think she should try," Lucia said. "The world is changing. Slowly, but it is changing. Maybe she will have opportunities I never had." "And Thomas?" Owen asked. "Thomas will travel, see the world, and hopefully come home eventually," Lucia said with a smile. "He is young. He needs to know what else is out there before he can appreciate what we have here." Owen pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. Below them, the ranch spread out in the gathering dusk, cattle lowing softly, horses moving in the pasture. It was everything he had never known he wanted, given to him by a woman who had taught him that loyalty was not rare. It was a choice, made new every day. "Do you ever regret it?" Owen asked quietly. "Marrying me, staying here. You could have gone to San Francisco, seen more of the world." "I have never regretted it for a moment," Lucia said firmly. "You are my world, Owen. You and our children and this life we built from nothing. What use would I have for San Francisco when I have everything I need right here?" "I love you," Owen said, as he had said countless times before and would say countless times again. "I love you more now than the day I asked you to marry me, and I loved you desperately then." "And I love you," Lucia replied, tilting her face up for a kiss. "My loyal, steady, wonderful husband who taught me that taking a chance on love was the best decision I ever made." They sat together until the stars emerged, brilliant in the clear desert sky. Inside the house, they could hear their children moving about, living their lives in the safety and security their parents had created. It was everything Owen had never dared to hope for, back when he rode into Monticello bleeding and bitter. He had thought loyalty was rare, a foolish dream that would only lead to disappointment. Then Lucia had shown him otherwise, not with words but with her actions, day after day, year after year. She had chosen him and kept choosing him, building a life of such deep trust and partnership that his old fears seemed laughable now. The years continued to pass with their mixture of joy and sorrow. Samuel married his sweetheart in 1896, and they built a house on the far corner of the ranch land. Margaret defied convention and traveled to Philadelphia in 1898, gaining admission to the Woman's Medical College of Pennsylvania. She wrote letters full of excitement and determination, and Owen and Lucia beamed with pride at her courage. Thomas wandered as predicted, working various jobs across the western states, sending postcards from San Francisco and Seattle and Denver. He always came home for Christmas, bringing stories and restlessness in equal measure. Owen saw his younger self in Thomas and simply loved him, knowing some people needed to roam before they could settle. In 1900, Samuel and his wife presented Owen and Lucia with their first grandchild, a girl they named Lucia after her grandmother. Holding that tiny baby, Owen felt the circle of life completing itself, understanding in his bones why people worked so hard to build families and communities. This was immortality of a sort, not in living forever but in passing on love and values to those who came after. The 20th century brought changes both subtle and profound. The Arizona Territory moved toward statehood, though Utah had beaten them to it in 1896. Automobiles began appearing in larger towns, though most of Monticello still relied on horses. Margaret returned home with her medical degree in 1902, officially joining her mother in practice, and becoming the first female physician many of their neighbors had ever met. Owen and Lucia adapted to these changes together, their partnership as strong at 50 as it had been at 25. They had weathered droughts and economic panics, childhood illnesses and the deaths of friends. Through it all, they had remained each other's constant, choosing loyalty and love over the thousand small resentments that could have driven them apart. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1904, the entire town celebrated with them. Morrison, now in his 80s and retired from ranching, gave a toast about the young cowboy who had shown up with a bullet wound and stayed to become one of Monticello's finest citizens. Margaret spoke about her parents' example of partnership and mutual respect. Samuel talked about learning what real love looked like by watching his parents. Owen stood to respond, Lucia's hand in his. 25 years ago, I thought I had the world figured out, he said to the assembled crowd. I thought people were basically selfish, that loyalty was a fantasy, and that trusting anyone would only lead to pain. Then I met a young woman who showed me how wrong I was, not by preaching or arguing, but simply by being herself, by showing up every day with integrity and compassion, by choosing me, even when I was too damaged to believe I deserved to be chosen. He turned to Lucia, looking into eyes that still made his heart speed up. You taught me that loyalty is not rare. It is everywhere in every small kindness and kept promise. It is in parents who sacrifice for their children and friends who show up in hard times. It is in people who do their jobs well simply because that is the right way to do things. Most of all, it is in partnerships like ours, where two people decide every morning to be true to each other no matter what the day brings. Lucia was crying, but smiling through her tears. You were not damaged, she said softly. You were hurt, and there is a difference. Hurt can heal when it is treated with care. You let me help you heal, and in doing so, you healed me too. We built this life together, stone by stone, choice by choice, and I would not change a single moment of it. They kissed while the crowd cheered, and Owen felt the same rush of love and gratitude he had felt on their wedding day. This was what happiness looked like, he thought. Not the absence of hardship, but the presence of someone who stood beside you through it all. Thomas finally settled down in 1905, marrying a schoolteacher from Denver and bringing her home to Monticello. They built a house in town, and Thomas surprised everyone by taking over the management of Lucia and Margaret's medical practice, handling the business side with unexpected skill. Owen realized his wandering son had needed to see the wider world to understand the value of home, just as Owen himself once had. The ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's increasingly capable management. Owen stepped back gradually, content to advise rather than direct, enjoying the leisure to spend more time with Lucia and their growing brood of grandchildren. They took walks like they had when they were courting, talking about books and politics and their hopes for their children's futures. In 1910, Owen turned 58 and Lucia 55. They remained healthy and active, though Owen's wounded shoulder bothered him more in cold weather, and Lucia sometimes wore spectacles for close work. These small concessions to age did not diminish their partnership, or the passion that still flared between them. One summer evening, very like the one when Owen had proposed decades earlier, they walked to the dry wash where they had spent so much time courting. The cottonwoods were thick and tall now, providing deep shade. They sat on the same fallen log, older and more weathered but still solid. "You remember the first time we sat here?" Owen asked. "I remember every time we sat here," Lucia replied. "I remember you telling me about Jack and the gold. I remember our wedding day and telling you I was pregnant with Samuel. I remember coming here after my father died because this was our place, where I knew I could find peace." "It is a good spot," Owen agreed. "We should buy this land, make sure it stays wild, leave it for the grandchildren." "That is a wonderful idea," Lucia said, squeezing his hand. "A place that belongs to our family, kept natural and beautiful." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light change. Owen thought about the long path that had brought him here, from that bitter young man riding into town with a bullet wound to this contented older man surrounded by love and legacy. "I need to tell you something," Owen said finally. "I have been thinking about it for a while, and I want to say it clearly while we are here in our spot." Lucia turned to him with concern. "What is it?" "I forgave Jack," Owen said simply. "Years ago, actually, but I never told you. I was reading the Bible one night, that passage about forgiveness, and I realized I was still carrying anger toward him. Not a lot, just a small coal still burning, so I let it go. I forgave him for shooting me, for stealing from me, for teaching me not to trust. I forgave him because holding on to it was pointless, and because his betrayal led me here to you. In a strange way, I am grateful to him." Lucia's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Owen, that must have been hard." "It was easier than I expected," Owen admitted. "Once I decided to do it, the anger just left. I realized I had been given so much more than he took from me. He got some gold. I got everything that matters." "You are a good man," Lucia said, her voice thick with emotion. "The best man I have ever known. I am so grateful that bullet only grazed you, that you made it to Monticello, that you walked into my father's office that day." "So am I," Owen said, pulling her close. "So am I." The years after that conversation continued peacefully. The ranch prospered, the medical practice served the growing community, and the grandchildren multiplied. Samuel and his wife had 3 children total. Thomas and his wife had 2. Margaret never married, too focused on her medical career, but she was a devoted aunt who spoiled all the nieces and nephews enthusiastically. Owen lived to see the Utah Territory complete its transformation into a modern state. He saw automobiles become common and airplanes take to the sky. He saw women gain the right to vote and marveled at how much the world had changed since his youth. Through it all, Lucia remained his constant, adapting to changes with practical grace while never losing the core of who she was. In 1920, Owen and Lucia celebrated their 41st wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even 2 great-grandchildren. Owen was 68, Lucia 65, and while age had slowed them both, it had not diminished their partnership. 41 years, Owen said during the celebration dinner. "Longer than I thought I would live when that bullet hit me. Every year a gift I never expected." 41 years of loyalty, Lucia added, raising her glass. Not the rare, mythical kind Owen once thought did not exist, but the daily, practical kind. The kind built from 1,000 small choices to show up, to be honest, to put each other first. That is real loyalty, and it is all around us if we only open our eyes to see it. Their children and grandchildren raised their glasses in toast, and Owen looked around the table at the faces of the family he and Lucia had created. Every person there existed because he had ridden into Monticello that long-ago summer day. Every smile and laugh and bond of love traced back to the moment of hurt. Bitter Cowboy met a wise young woman who refused to let him stay bitter. As the evening wound down and family members began heading to their various homes, Owen and Lucia stood on their porch, watching the stars emerge. They held hands like they had for more than 4 decades, comfortable in the silence of deep companionship. "I love you," Owen said, as he had said thousands of times before. "I love you too," Lucia replied, as she always had and always would. They went inside together, closing the door on another perfect day. In the morning, they would wake up and choose each other again, as they had every morning for 41 years. They would continue building their life together, stone by stone, choice by choice, until the day one of them did not wake up. But that day was not today, and it would not be tomorrow. Today they were here together, living proof that loyalty was not rare at all. It was simply a choice, made daily, to be trustworthy and true. And when two people made that choice together, they could build something beautiful enough to last not just a lifetime but generations. Owen had believed loyalty was rare. Then Lucia had shown him that rare could become reality, and reality could become more wonderful than any dream. She had given him everything, this woman who stitched his wound and his heart with equal skill. And he had given her everything in return, proving himself worthy of the trust she placed in him so long ago. The ranch would eventually pass to Samuel and his children, as both Owen and Lucia wanted. The medical practice would continue under Margaret and whatever physician she took on as partner. Thomas's business skills would keep the family financially secure. The land by the dry wash would remain wild and beautiful, a place for future generations to sit and remember the love story that started it all. When Owen finally passed in his sleep in 1925 at the age of 73, Lucia mourned deeply but not desperately. They had known this day would come, had prepared as much as anyone can prepare for such loss. Owen had lived a full, rich life, surrounded by love until his final moment. He died as he had lived the last 47 years, secure in the knowledge that he was cherished. Lucia lived another 3 years, supported by her children and sustained by her practice. She worked until the very end, treating patients and training younger doctors. When she passed peacefully in 1928 at the age of 73, the entire community mourned her loss. She had delivered half the babies in town, set countless broken bones, and saved more lives than anyone could count. They buried her beside Owen in the little cemetery outside Monticello, under cottonwood trees with a view of the Red Rocks. The headstone reads simple and true. Owen and Lucia Irving, partners in love and life. They proved that loyalty, given and received, is the greatest treasure. Their children and grandchildren continued to thrive, carrying forward the values Owen and Lucia had exemplified. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to what two people could build when they committed fully to each other. The medical practice continued, with Margaret training several female physicians who went on to establish their own practices. The story of Owen and Lucia became family legend, told to children and grandchildren as an example of what real love looked like. Not the easy, romantic kind from novels, but the daily, practical kind that weathered storms and celebrated joys in equal measure. The kind built on choosing each other, over and over, until that choice became as natural as breathing. Owen had ridden into Monticello believing loyalty was the rarest thing in the world, something people talked about but never truly embodied. Lucia had shown him otherwise, not with grand gestures but with steady presence. She had chosen him when he was damaged and doubtful, and she had kept choosing him until his last breath. In return, Owen had given her his absolute loyalty, proving himself worthy of her trust day after day, year after year. Together they had built a life of such richness and meaning that their love story echoed through generations, inspiring their descendants to choose loyalty and trust in their own partnerships. The ranch still stands today, worked by Owen and Lucia's great-great-grandchildren. The medical clinic in Monticello bears a plaque honoring both Lucia and Margaret, pioneers who proved women belonged in medicine. The land by the dry wash remains wild, protected by the family as Owen and Lucia wished, a place where any Irving can go to remember where it all started. And sometimes, when the light hits just right and the cottonwoods rustle in the breeze, you can almost see them there. A tall cowboy with dark hair going gray, sitting beside a woman whose sage-green eyes held all the wisdom of the world. Holding hands in the shade, proving that loyalty, when given to the right person, is not rare at all. It is simply the most precious thing two people can share, and the foundation on which all lasting love is built.